Hi, I'm Charlie Collins, and we're talking sport. And you're welcome to this week's edition of Talking Sport. With me in studio are Tony Boyle, former Donegal All-Star, and Alan Foley from the Donegal Democrat. And to say that we have plenty to talk about this week would be something of an understatement. You're welcome, guys. Thanks for coming in. We're going to start with the situation pertaining to the Donegal senior team manager, Jim McGuinness. It was announced, of course, at the weekend, to the relief of many, that he decided he would remain in the position for at least another year and see out the fourth year of his 3-year contract with the Donegal senior footballers. There had been much speculation over the last few weeks as to what he might or might not do. But Tony, in the end, I suppose we've got to take our hats off to everybody involved in what was fairly extensive discussions over the last month or so in relation to how Jim saw it, what the clubs needed to do, the clubs coming to the table and basically saying, OK, we understand where you're coming from and we're prepared to basically toe the line, if that's the best way to put it.
Yeah, I think it's great news all round, Charlie, that Jim's decided to stay on for another year, especially the work he's done this last 3 years. I suppose, along with having the discussions with the county board, I suppose Jim's other points that he had to probably take into consideration was obviously his employment with Celtic and how that was going to develop from last year. And obviously he had a couple of new arrivals lately as well, so there was a lot. I'm sure there was a lot more in Jim's mind, just apart from getting things sorted out with the county board. But as you said, it was very good. I know I was involved in a club meeting with ourselves down in Dunlow, and the couple of proposals were put to the club, and the club were happy enough to go with what was being recommended, So listen, it's great. As I said, I know knowing Jim, playing with him, and I know a lot of the boys that are involved. I think the last thing they'd want to do is walk away after the way that this year's championship finished. So it's great all round. I'm sure people are looking forward to the championship already next year. Yeah,
and that was the core issue, really. It seemed to be at least the core issue. I know you're probably right, Tony. There was other aspects to it as well. But in relation to football in Donegal, Jim sort of felt that what happened with the championship this year really made it difficult for him to prepare the team properly and had a negative effect on them when it got to the latter stages of the Ulster Championship and to an All-Ireland quarter-final.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. Knowing being there as a player and then being involved as a selector. When you're a player and things are going well for the county, you sort of just want to put all your concentration into the county setup, and unfortunately, then the clubs suffer. There's certain clubs that are dependent on their county players for ordinary league matches, and it's a balancing act because being back involved with the club this last number of years, it's unfortunate at times where a lot of club players are not getting football between June, July and August, but it's getting the balancing act right. Probably postponing the championship till after Donegal are beat is probably the right thing. I think they may even have to tweak it a wee bit further, maybe looking down the line till next year and maybe go with a straight knockout competition, because to try and run off a championship and a county as big as Donegal, and especially with so many players in college in Dublin, it's easier for the counties in the north. I've always said that, like Tyrone and Derry, they can run off the championship fairly quick because people are involved.
Close at hand,
they're close at hand in that. Whereas in Donegal, on the old system, there was guaranteed 2 games, sometimes 3 games. With the group situation, it's 3 games before you get to quarter-final stage. I think down the line they may have to look at just a straight knockout, neutral venue, and then they have a chance to run it off and making sure the county champions go on to the Ulster club.
Yeah, there was never going to be an easy solution to it, Alan, really. And I mean, the media have been keeping a very close eye on what might happen, because there was a general feeling if Jim didn't get what he wanted in terms of the championship next year, that could be the thing that decided it, and nobody wanted to see that. But it was a big ask to ask the clubs, as Tony has said, to postpone the championship to God knows when now, because obviously the more successful the county team is, the later the championship's going to be played.
Yeah, I think though the initial proposal Jim had was to play maybe 2 rounds off the senior and intermediate championships in April or so. That didn't really suit anybody, I suppose, with the fact that there might be lads going to America if their clubs lost the first 2 games. So one of the clubs actually proposed to bring it the whole thing till after Donegal were knocked out. And when Jim sold the thing, Charlie, it made an awful lot of sense. He said between the 26th of May and the 4th of August was 11 weekends. His players played 9 up to 9 championship games weekends. There was only 2 free weekends.
Yeah.
There was 5 Donegal games. There was 4 weekends here of club championships, if you consider the weekend where the Gaeltacht teams had to play a week later. So he done his work on it, and it made a lot of sense. He also said on the Tuesday after club championship, his players, basically you can't give them a full training session, so you can see where he comes from, and I'm sure he sold it very well to the clubs, and he has probably the stats to back it up as well.
Yeah, and credit to the clubs. I mean, credit to them, because it would have been easy enough for them to say, well, this is putting club football really on the back burner, because okay, you'll have the league, but as we all know, the thing, and we saw it at the weekend again, the thing that most interests people is what happens in the championship.
Absolutely, yeah, but I think this will actually suit, because Jim will have his panel at his disposal until Donegal are finished in the Ulster All-Ireland series. Then the clubs will have their players solely, so you won't have maybe a county player running over and back and trying to sit between 2 stools.
Yeah,
so it might be the best.
So we look forward to 2014 now, Tony, with things as they were, perhaps. And I suppose the other key thing that Jim actually mentioned at the weekend is that the panel have committed to playing next year, because there had been speculation that maybe 1 or 2 or maybe slightly more than that were looking at it seriously and wondering, can we give this commitment again?
Yeah, well, it's always a big call, especially the guys that are probably heading into their late 20s, early 30s, because the commitment that's involved now, Charlie, is it's unbelievable. You worry at times that maybe our county career is going to get even shorter because of the amount of time that's involved and the intensity of the training that has to be done week in, week out. So listen, it's great. As I said earlier, I don't think any of the players or any of the backroom staff would want to walk away and on the back of that defeat. But just getting back to the point about the club championship. And I think it's something that Ulster Council should look at. I've said it a long time. I think the Ulster Championship has drawn out far, far too long.
Yeah.
The fact that I know they like to give us a separate Sunday to every game, but even as a player, there's sometimes you're waiting 3-4 weeks to an Ulster final, depending on when your semi-final falls. So I think that's something that could be looked at to maybe tighten that up, and it gives you an extra few weeks then for clubs to get their county players back. So I think it's a combined thing all round.
What's the chances of that happening, Tony?
Probably none.
It's a good proposal, Alan, and it's interesting that on the back of Munster making a very interesting decision that they're going to seed. So it means that Cork and Kerry are going to be favoured down there. One of them is going to be probably guaranteed a quarter-final spot, and the other a spot in the last round of the qualifiers. And yet in all, we have a minefield up here in the Ulster Championship every year. So not only, as Tony says, is it stretched out, but you also have a situation where you're playing hard games no matter who you meet.
Absolutely, and you could see that was the case this year. I suppose at the start of the year, even teams like Monaghan and Cavan wouldn't have been very well fancied. Cavan got to an All-Ireland quarter-final. Monaghan did as well, as Ulster champions.
Yeah.
Then you have to factor in all that there's teams that were probably perceived better than them. Charity teams like Derry, ourselves, Tyrone, Armagh. So it's a very competitive championship, but I think it's very unfair on the weaker teams in Munster, to have seeded the championship. Kerry and Cork they'll get to the final anyway. So as you said, at worst now, you're going to have Cork or Kerry in the last 12. And it's a very tough championship, I suppose, for teams like Tipperary and Waterford and Clare.
No chance of them seeding them in Ulster?
I can't see that, Charlie. If anything, Ulster Championship start as levelled out again. For years there, Tyrone and Armagh were dominant, and thankfully over the last 3 years we've been thereabouts. So, and as Alan said, Cavan have won the last 3 Ulster Under 21 titles, and I'm sure they're going to be looking to step up to the mark at senior level. So it'll be a very, very difficult job if you were trying to put a seeding system in place in Ulster.
Absolutely. Right, we're going to move on to the championship, but club championship, and after the group stages, which was introduced for the first time, we lost the likes of Neath Connell, St Michael's and Four Masters, 3 teams that would have been fancied. And at the weekend, we lost the reigning champions St Eunan's and Kilcar, leaving us a semi-final line-up, Tony. I suppose we lost on low at a stage during that as well, and Glenfin, who are a good championship team. Malin versus Killybegs, Glensoley versus Ardra. You would have got some bet on that at the start of the campaign, that would have been the last 4.
Oh, definitely, Charlie. You got massive odds. I just read at the weekend that I think the 4 that won their groups as well were all knocked out at the weekend. So, listen, if you're looking from the outside, you're probably saying it was good to make a change and the system has worked because there's no guarantee. Obviously, the shock of the championship, especially on the Saturday, was obviously Malin won and thing. But I think it goes to prove the amount of work that's been done and is shown, as every club player knows that Malin is not an easy place to go. I would say they probably got a wee bit of a coup to get the game in Buncrana,
Yeah.
because I think they were based in Buncrana for a couple of years when they were developing their own pitch, so that was a help. I think also when you come to quarterfinals, and it's probably helped the weaker teams or the underdogs, because there was such a break since the group stages, that was the time to probably catch the likes of St Eunan that are current champions. They haven't played, a few boys away in America. If Eunans to get over a quarter final and they get a bit of a run and they're out in a semi final, they could have been hard to stop. So it was probably a day, but by all accounts, I wasn't at the match, but by all accounts in the reports, it was a very well deserved victory for Malin, and it's a big boost for Inishowen as well. You know, they've done a lot of work. I think it was a great idea combining the schools down there and playing on
we talked about that here.
It's obviously bearing fruit now. So it'll be interesting now. I'm sure it'll be something Jim will be looking at. Malin's going to fancy themselves against Killybegs, who've struggled in Division 1, and obviously Malin has beaten them a couple of times, so they'll be fancying themselves getting to a county final.
Big blow to St Eunan's, Alan, and they've shown in the past that they are vulnerable when it gets to quarter-final stages, semi-final. They tend to win finals, but in those knockout stages they have been caught in the past as well, and comprehensively beaten on Saturday night.
Yeah, I think there's no complaints around Letterkenny. It was actually Eamon O'Boyle. It'll be the first year he doesn't win a championship, because he was in 08 and 09. Won senior championships, then he came back last year along with Brendan Devaney and Michael McGeehan, so it's his first time not winning it. But they were missing Ross Wordy, he's in Philadelphia, and Conal Dunn, who's a very important player, he's suspended. Rory Kavanagh was carrying a bit of a knock, and although there's a very good nucleus of young players there, they probably need those leaders to kind of get them over the line. It was really only maybe had John Harnan fall forward and Kevin Rafferty trying to link the play, which he did pretty admirably, but I don't think anybody can complain. Malin were excellent on the day. Yeah,
it's good for GAA football, isn't it? I mean, to see the likes of Malin, as you said, coming through, because obviously you look at the semi-final line, you looked at the group stages, you didn't expect Malin to come out of the group for a stage with Glenties in there as well, and then when they were drawn against St Eunan's, you thought, well, that's hard luck on them, because you know they played them in the group stages, so that's going to be it. But it's fantastic to see them in a semi-final, Tony.
It's a great boost, Charlie, obviously for Malin first and foremost, and for Inishowen, but also for other clubs. No more so than ourselves. We look and you're trying to build every year and try and improve, but when you can see someone like Malin, you know, on the verge now of a county final for the first time ever, you know, it's a great boost for the so-called maybe weaker teams, or the teams that have less resources than the bigger one. And the last thing you want is a club or one or two clubs dominating your county championship. You know, you see it happens in Armagh. It must be very, very dispiriting for other clubs starting off. So that's me. It's a great boost, and as I say, Malin have a big say to where the county title goes this year.
Absolutely. They're going to play Killybegs now, and we can't figure them out, Alan, because they haven't won a league game, and they were in a tough enough group, because the four teams in that group were well matched, and they came out of it along with Gidor, and McCool's had done well to come out of their group as well, but Killybegs just seem to wear a different hat when it comes to the championship.
Yeah, they're 0-13, I think, as they say in the league. They got relegated the week before, but they've really got it together in the championship, and as you said, that group was quite tight. They drew with Gidor, they beat I think Termon and Dunload to get out of it. McCool's had started the year pretty poorly, got a bit of form, but seemed to have lost the form again. So I think Hugh McFadden was very good in that game. I think he scored two goals and 4 points, and he's really put himself in the window too. But like, if you think about it, Killybegs kind of came from nowhere in 2010 to reach a final. You didn't really expect much of it, and I suppose they have a bit of tradition, but I think the current team, they must be absolutely delighted, considering, as you said, the league form is so miserable.
Fantastic. Moving on to Sunday, the big one was always going to be Glenswilly and Kilcar. Not a pretty sight, one would have to say. The game 8-7 to Glenswilly, just holding on. Kilcar will be kicking themselves, they missed a few chances later on, sort of thing, but Glenswilly are another side very difficult to beat. I watched them in difficult conditions down in the bridge against St Michael's when they needed a result as well, and they got it, Tony. And they came through. Maybe physical strength played a big part on Sunday, because Kilcar are an emerging side, but they have a lot of young players and perhaps not physically strong players yet, and maybe that cost them on Sunday.
Yeah, they'll definitely be kicking themselves, Charlie. Even later on, you know, they had 3 chances going into injury time to at least snatch a draw. But as you say, Glenswilly, you know, a big, strong, physical team, with obviously their leaders with Michael Murphy and Neil Gallagher. You know, I suppose there was an added bit of tension going into the game, because they would have known Eunans were beat the night before, which would have been, both of them would have been thinking, well, whoever comes out of this are probably going to be favourites for the championship. You know, obviously it turned out to a war of attrition, with both teams just getting men behind the ball, and conditions weren't good on the day. But listen, probably that wee bit of experience, that wee bit of power came down on the favour of Glenswilly. I watched Kilcar in the championship, under 21 championship this year, and as you say, they have a lot of good young players coming through, and they're definitely one for the future. But I would say they will be very disappointed, because I would say this year, especially with Michael Hegarty playing as well as he was, I would say this is the year
they'll see it as one maybe got away on them, Tony, will they?
I think so. I think so, and unfortunately, no more so than Glenswally, they're thinking Eunans were gone. And this was a massive chance. Get over Glenswally and you're going to be favourites going into the last four, so it's one that got away. They're still in the under 21 championship, but again, who knows what'll happen next year. That is a tough group. St Michael's will be looking to bounce back. I think Kilcar had 2 home games last year. They'll have 2 away, or
that's right.
reverse. But it's one that got away. But you have to hand it to Glenswally. They were relegated. They were relegated last year, along with ourselves, but they've bounced back. They'll go back to Division 1 this year, and they're in a semi-final championship, so it's looking good for them.
They've regrouped Glenswally, obviously, under Gary McDade's management now, and maybe they had a bit of a hangover from winning the championship the year before, and it's always hard to maintain it, but they've got to fancy their chances now after coming through that one, Alan.
Yeah, they can play themselves out of situations. I think they're very, very well drilled under Gary McDade. He's there now. He wasn't there last year, but he had won the championship in 2011. He was along with John McGuinness in 2010, the year Niamh Conall only beat them with 2 very late goals in O'Donnell Park from the Thompson brothers. So I think when Gary's there, you can see there are a lot of people involved on the line, but everybody is playing their part there, and they've really got the kind of community ethic in the club. And as I said, they're very difficult to beat when it comes to these championship games. They really do play to their strengths.
Yeah. So they're going to be playing Ardra, and double scores victory over Eudore. I mean, that came as a surprise to me. I fancied Eudore to win that, and I should have known better, because we were talking about it here last week. Brendan Kilcoyne was in with us, and we were talking about the tradition that was there with Ardra. They seem to, like Killybegs probably this year, when it comes to championship, they're a different kind of a team, Tony.
Oh, definitely. But Charlie, I would have said that was every bit as big a surprise as Malin beating Eunans, because I just felt, I knew Paddy McGrath was out injured, and they'd been struggling with some injuries as well, But to beat Eudore, who had kept obviously Kevin Cassidy back from America, and obviously the 2 McGee's and Odin McNeilis, who had stepped up to the mark this year, but it's a fantastic result. And as I say, the one thing about Ardra, you can always say they're a championship team. They're struggling a wee bit in Division 1, but that'll be a major boost for them. Now, obviously, it's a big ask against Glenswally, but they've got results against Glenswally before in the championship, so it's not one that they'll fear. They'll take it as a no more so than Killybegs. Going back to Killybegs, I remember back, I think it was 88 or 89, we were back in Division 1, and we lost our 14 matches in Division 1, but we actually got to the semi-final of the championship that year. And sometimes when you're struggling in the league, you just forget about it, and you concentrate on the championship. So Ardra will have nothing to lose going in against Glenswally. They'll be raging hot favourites, and listen, if they get Paddy McGrath back and a couple of the guys that are injured, you just never know. Yeah.
Just call it then, Malin versus Killybegs, Glenswally versus Ardra. Who's going to come in, Tony?
I think it'll be a Malin Glenswally final, which would be very interesting.
Interesting indeed. Alan?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Tony on that as well. The two sides have met a couple of times in relegation playoffs, I think, not so long ago as well. So yeah, I think Malin as well, and Glenswally.
And you would have got some odds in that at the start of the year.
Oh, it would have been unbelievable.
We could have went on a holiday together here.
The funny thing, if you look back, Charlie, last year's winners were St Eunan, who are out. They beat Niamh Conall, who are out. The 2 losing semi-finalists were Dunlow and Four Masters, who are out. Yeah. And then on last year's form, arguably the next best 2 teams were Kilcar and St Michael's, who are out. So
funny old game.
Yeah.
Dublin versus Mayo, Tony. Just a quick one about that before we move on. Mayo have to win in All Ireland. They need to win it, and they can't come back and lose this one again, because if they do, then we mightn't see them back for a while.
Yeah, I think, Charlie, that's really the main point going into Sunday's game. It's probably the 2 best teams all year are in the final, which is good to see. Obviously, we'd rather Donegal been in there, but on form they were probably the best 2 teams. I think that's the biggest thing that Mayo have to. The biggest challenge is mentally going into the game, how they're prepared mentally, and if there's any wee doubts about losing another final. And looking back at the semi-final after 30 minutes against Tyrone, it looked like them doubts were creeping back in, and forwards taking wrong options, kicking wides, and in fairness to Barrett, came up and kicked 2 great scores to get them back into it. So there is a bit more steel about them. In fairness, James Horne's done a great job with them. But I think if they can get over that psychological fear possibly of losing it, and go out and play. The one thing they won't fear is playing Dublin. They've a good record against them, but Dublin, you'd just be worried if Dublin would cut loose and hit Mayo for a couple of goals early on. It could be the same old story. But listen, Mayo probably of all the teams over this last number of years deserve an All-Ireland, and maybe Sunday will be there.
Yeah, because I mean, people talk about Dublin, Alan, they say they have a bit of a soft centre, but in fairness to them, Kerry put it up to them seriously, and at one stage in the first half, after Kerry got the third goal, they looked to be in trouble, but they came back well. Now, they've problems in defence, there's no doubt about that, but their attack, as Tony says, is so potent that if they get away with themselves, Mayo's going to be in big bother.
Yeah, the Mannion goal got them right back into it the last day. I think Cork had probably exposed a couple of chinks in Dublin's full back line where Kerry kind of exploited that, but as you said, Charlie, they've so many options. The thing about Dublin is you might be curtailing whoever's playing forward, then you see the bench empty, and the bench is ridiculously talented as well. So
yeah, they took McManaman, O'Gara and Rock off the bench the last day. I mean, and that's a big thing to be able to do that.
Absolutely, yeah. And like McManaman has proven he's nearly a super sub status now since the All-Ireland against Kerry, and they've serious talent coming off the bench. And I suppose them players are all different types of players, so if you're marking a guy and you think you've got his measure, then you got a totally different proposition coming at you then. So
okay, we'll hope for a Mayo victory then, will we? Stay with the boys from the West.
Yeah, I suppose they've gone through a fair bit of heartache.
62
Charlie,
years, Tony. We can't begrudge it.
My heart would say Mayo, but unfortunately my head would say Dublin.
Okay, let's move on to soccer. Alan, you were at the Harps game last night in Drogheda. They should have won on Friday night. Controversial sending off. Played very well. Probably if they had stayed with 11 men, they would have done it. And last night they were beaten 2-0, but the second goal came very late on. So they've given a very good account of themselves in the two matches against Drogheda, but really they'll be disappointed not to be in a semi-final.
It was a big opportunity for them. There was a lot of trouble in Drogheda last week with Mick Cook. He's going to be let go at the end of the season, and the fans are backing him big time. There's also the Harps had really had nothing to lose. A bit like we said there about Kelly Beggs, they'd nearly written off the league at this stage. So in fairness, there was a good crowd there, almost 1,000 on Friday night. They put up a great show. It was easily probably their best performance so far this season, and could have maybe been more than the one ahead before Kieran Call was sent off, which we weren't too sure of the time it was off the ball, but having seen it last night on M&S, it was pretty
Tony,
ridiculous.
you were watching it too, and just unbelievable red card.
I do, and as Alan says, it completely turned the game. We've seen Kevin McHugh's goal, absolutely spectacular goal that put Harps ahead, and they'd one or two chances, and when it zoomed in on the. And if anything, it was the Drogheda winger that ran into the back of Call. And how to get booked would have been a harsh call, but for him to, and it completely changed.
No wonder I give out about referees, Tony. No wonder, and people criticise me for it. But sometimes you wonder what game are officials watching. And I mean, it doesn't only happen in the League of Ireland. We look at the Premiership, and I know the game's fast, and I know they have to make very quick decisions, and I know they don't get the benefit of replay sometimes. But sometimes, Alan, you have to throw your arms up and say, what did they see there that we didn't see?
Yeah, it's funny on Friday because the referee didn't see it at all. He was actually called over by the fourth official, a fellow called Rob Rogers. He gave Tom Connolly the information. It's not often you see we're always complaining about assistant referees and linesmen and umpires not seeing enough, but this guy wanted to get involved, if you know what I mean. So Peter kind of, in fairness, questioned the decision probably a bit too loudly, but then
would you blame him?
Not one bit. He had to hop the wall then. So he had to watch the end of the game then from basically in the stands. So I suppose, as they were saying last night on television, if Sligo or Derry had to come to Finn Park in a semi-final, like the amount that would mean to Harps. They're struggling with Gates all year in the first division. If you got a big bumper game like that, and you could say the referee's decision certainly really turned the game.
And the flip side of it, Alan, is the season's basically over for them now, because I mean they're going nowhere in the league and they haven't been for a while. The cup was a nice one to keep the thing rolling over, but that's gone now as well. Yeah,
they have 4 games left, Charlie. They're starting with Merview on Friday night, and there's a couple of boys carrying knocks and injuries, so Peter's a big enough squad there, and they're putting a bit of focus into the youth development, so you might see the likes of young McGinty and young Jordan Tolan, these sort of guys maybe getting a run. Peter said he'd hope to do that, but the one thing he wants to be kind of respectful towards the league as well, and not to be seen to be giving other teams easy games, so he's going to try and strike a balance there somewhere along the line for the end of the
Sligo not having the greatest season either, Tony, after a fantastic start, but they just got the better of Derry, and we hear talk that Derry's manager Declan Devine might be under a bit of pressure again. Started the season fairly well, but have tapered off. But Sligo, Shamrock Rovers has a good ring about it for a cup semi-final as well. And after a great season last season, it's always difficult, isn't it, to keep that momentum going, and we've seen that with Sligo this year.
Yeah, listen, we've probably seen it with Donegal this year as well. Whether it's the hunger, whether it's mental tiredness, a lot of the time it can be a bit of both. But funny, I still think Sligo might have a say in the league yet, and I think they're only about five off the top. Obviously, beating Derry was a big victory for them especially in the cup anyway, home advantage always seems to be a big advantage. But Sligo and Shamrock Rovers will be a dinger, but even Drogheda and Dundalk as well, a derby. So there's making it two very good semi-finals.
Absolutely. Closer to home, Cockhill Celtic and Drumkeen. Alan playing the Ulster Senior League on Sunday. They played in the League Cup and Cockhill just got through. I suppose what that proved is how evenly matched the two teams are. We've seen it all season in terms of league points. We've seen it when they've played as well. But interestingly, Cockhill have got the better of the matches that they've played against one another. That has to be a big one going into, and with home advantage on Sunday as well. Yeah,
they've got that just little edge in them. And Gavin Freeland in particular, he scored the winning goal on Sunday, and I think he also scored the 2 goals in the 2-0 win, which really is the result that is keeping Cockhill's noses in front of Drumkeen. Cockhill, they're unbeaten still in the league as well, you see, so it's going to be a big ask for Drumkeen to go down to Bungrana. But as I said, they're still in with it. They're in with the fight, and you can even see going through the village there the last day, they've the flags up and they're all getting behind the team, which is good to see as well.
The one thing about Drumkeen is they know this is a must-win, Tony. There's no point in going down there and getting a draw, because it's going to leave them 2 points behind. And then I think it's Kildrum, both teams have to play in their final match. I'm not 100% sure about that, but they can do something themselves, won on Sunday, go to the top of the table, and then won their last match and won the league title. So it's simple arithmetics, really. Won your 2 matches and you're the champion. So at least they know that, and they can't go down there with a negative attitude on Sunday.
No, that's and sometimes that's a good way to be going in, Charlie. But obviously Cockhill then are on the other side. Are they thinking of sitting back and try and play for a draw, which can be dangerous as well, It's a great finale to the Ulster Senior League. Obviously, with Cockhill, it's all the local guys, and I've seen the reserve team, I think, won in the Junior Cup as well. So they must, they've a lot of strength and depth, which is good. Obviously, it's good to see Drumkeen getting or up around the top for a change, although you do see a few names, a few boys that have been around a few different clubs, but it's great to see a different club up there. And as I say, it's still technically in their own hands to go down to Cloughill and won on Sunday and won their last game and won the league, which would be a great boost for the area. Yeah,
and what's good, I think, is in recent times there's been good crowds at the matches as well, Alan, because that's one thing that was a concern for the Ulster Senior League. But the fact that these two teams have been going head to head basically without playing one another has brought the interest back into it, and so seen on Sunday for the final as well.
Yeah, because Derry City Reserves won the league last year, Charlie, and they won it pretty much at a canter, I suppose, so teams would lose interest and even people following the games. But the way it's neck and neck now, and 1 week one team will steal a march and vice versa, so it is developing an interest. And I suppose there's a lot of criticisms about summer football, but one thing from a spectator point of view, it's definitely probably easier to do, and there's a lot of games midweek and stuff that would suit people maybe when things are a little bit quieter as well. So yeah,
good to see it. Now we're going to finish off with the international scene. Tony, I'm going to start with you because this man is a hardcore supporter here for the Republic of Ireland team, so I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to hear from him. But anyway, I haven't been a fan of Trapattoni's, I have to say, since he was appointed, and I've said it in my column, the Donegal News this week. It's just like he was too negative for me. And I know that, listen, and the argument is there, and it's at all levels of football. You only can work with what you have. But I think he had more to work with than he actually brought across in terms of team performances and sort of stuff. And I know he got us to Euro 2012 and all that sort of stuff. But I'm glad to see him go. Where do you sit with this whole situation?
No, I'd be similar, Charlie. Obviously, I follow the Irish team as well, watching them. Don't make as many trips as Alan would make, but listen, to watch the brand of football that they play, it's nearly unwatchable. In fairness, they started reasonably well against Sweden for the first 15-20 minutes. The minute we get the goal, we just seem to sit back and see how high we can kick it. And it's like watching maybe a junior soccer game in Donegal, and that's even doing it maybe a disservice to the junior soccer. But listen, it's disappointing they're out of the campaign. I don't think. In fairness to him, he did get us to European Championship out of a tight enough group. But supporters want to see decent football. Some people are happy enough if we scramble results, but in the overall scheme of things, bar maybe the night we went to Paris and played against France,
that was a performance. You're
going to struggle to pick out 3-4 decent performances. Even nights that we won games that. They just, you struggled over the line and that. So, listen, it's disappointing. I would agree with you, Charlie, to a certain extent. I think there's more talent there. And even some of the talent that he had at his disposal, he just didn't want to see midfielders get on the ball. It was get it from back to front as quick as possible, and then try and work off the scraps. So, listen, it's he done a reasonable job, I suppose, in his eyes. It's a results game, business, But it'll be interesting to see who gets the job now, and see can we Can we unearth some more guys? There's a lot of guys that have seemingly fallen out with Trapattoni. Will they come back into the reckoning? Andy Reid springs to mind, who's playing very well with Forest.
Darren Gibson's another one.
I see Stephen Ireland's looking to.
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't be a favourite of Stephen Ireland.
I think Trapattoni has served his time, and hopefully now we get someone in and lift it again.
Because Alan, I mean, you were at nearly all the games, and it was always going to be for second place between Ireland, Sweden and Austria. And I mean, John Giles said to me when he was up for the golf thing a number of weeks back, listen, we still have a chance because Sweden and Austria are not that good. They're not that brilliant. And just looking at the stats, we took 2 points out of a possible 12 from those two teams.
2 out of 15, Charlie.
2 out of 15, sorry.
2 out
of 12 from those two.
Germany as well.
Counting Germany, yeah. But if you look at Sweden and Austria, we took 2 points out of a possible 12. And therein lies the problem. And I mean, neither of those two teams are, as John Giles says, really brilliant, are they?
No, but the one thing both them teams have that we don't have is one world-class player each, because David Alaba was comfortably the best player on the pitch in Vienna last week.
Yeah.
And when the ball dropped to him, you just knew he wasn't going to miss. He done the same thing in Dublin in the last minute as well.
Yeah.
And Sweden as well with Ibrahimovic, who Ireland shackled pretty well in Stockholm. But in Dublin, you could see when the notion hit him, he's just got that touch of class about him. And even at one stage, a ball come over the back post. Most fellas would just lump him with a header. He stood off Mark Wilson, still managed to chest the ball up high and get his volley in and stuff.
Yeah.
But as you said, Charlie, even if you count Germany into that mini league, where Sweden got a bonus point basically in a 4-all draw, we've got 2 points out of 15 with our hardest fixture still to come, which is away to Germany and Cologne. So it's not good enough. Even we've played the 3 big teams at home, we've conceded 10 goals. Like, that's not really traditionally what the Irish teams used to do. So
yeah, and we conceded 10 goals playing defensively. Now I know 6 of them came in the German game, but it wasn't that we were going out to attack them and say, well, if we concede a few, that's fine as long as we score a few.
Yeah, I think that's the main problem with what people think about Trapattoni, because people say the style of football is poor, which it is, but they also says under Jack Charlton it was poor, which it was.
Yeah.
But when Jack Charlton was there, you weren't afraid of anybody. Like, remember we went into the Viva 2 years ago, Ireland were playing Armenia, and you were genuinely fearful of losing. It turned out Armenia had 10 men, they got a goalkeeper sent off and still outplayed Ireland for most of the game. So I think what we need is a bit of that fearlessness back and just get on the ball, but just a bit of tempo. And we have, I don't know if whether the players are there or not, there was a stat in the paper yesterday, only 7 Irishmen started in the Premier League over the weekend.
That's interesting.
So it was Kieran Westwood in goal, there was 3 defenders, Seamus Coleman, Delaney, who's not even in the squad, and O'Brien, who's not in the squad, the 2 Stoke lads, Walters and Wilson, and the other one fails me now at the minute.
No, you're close. Yeah, you have 7 there with that.
Robbie Brady.
Yeah. And Tony, what's interesting as well is a few players have already come out and said, well, he stifled us. Well, we had to play that way, and that's not a good thing either, because if you're in the squad and you know, right, I'm going to have to play this way whether I like it or not, and my options are, like Darren Gibson, to either pull out of the squad or stay in the squad, that's not a good situation.
No, it's not a good situation, Charlie, and there's obviously a wee bit of unrest. Obviously, the difference in soccer and Gaelic, you have to be professional, and you have to do what the manager tells you. But I suppose, like, looking back, Trapattoni is still if only the international manager that still maintains that 4-4-2 can work at international level. And listen, it's just no other international team plays it. It's always 4-5-1 or 4-4-1-1. So and the more people wanted him to change, the more
stubborn he became.
The more stubborn he got.
Martin O'Neill's the name that's been thrown out there again. Question marks about Martin O'Neill. Did very well early in his career with Wickham and with Leicester, and did very well with Celtic. But that's in a situation where it's a 2-team league, really. And he did very, very well. Hasn't done that well since he came back to England with Villa and Sunderland. Okay, now let's not say he did badly. He did okay, but international management's a different thing. And it looks to me, Tony, as if the only reason that he's been, or one of the only reasons, is that he's available, and that's not a good enough reason for appointing him, really, is it?
No, it's not a good enough reason. But again, listen, in his early career, he did do some good things, as he said, with Leicester and Celtic. It's a difficult one because it's very hard to get a young manager that'll take an international job on, because they obviously want the day-to-day with a club, so it's a balancing act. But we'll have to leave it in the safe hands of John Delaney.
Well, Alan, the final word to you on that.
Yeah, I think O'Neill, as you said, Charlie, but if O'Neill can do something like he did with Celtic, where they're competing against good teams in Europe and just playing to your strengths, really, I think, as I said, that's what Irish supporters want, is just not be afraid of teams, go out, give it a rattle, and maybe harness whatever ability you do have instead of trying to bypass it, which was Trapattoni.
Bring the no fear of the Jack Charlton area back into it.
And I think even with O'Neill there's a bit more warmth. Supporters can relate to him kind of a bit more, where the Trapattoni thing got very standoff at the end, and De Viva was even the game against Sweden, like the teams come out, the stadium was half full. It actually filled up pretty well then. But the difference between it and Vienna, where everybody was kind of pumping in the one direction, if you know what I mean, where was playing to see. And as I said, I don't know if we've got many top players anymore now at all, but if we can even get something near the maximum of what we have, I think people will be happy enough.
Yeah, and try and qualify for the next World Cup in 4 years' time rather than anything else. Guys, we've run out of time. Appreciate you coming on. Tony Boyle and Alan Foley, thanks for joining me on Talking Sport. That's it for this week. We'll be back with more in the not too distant future. From everybody here, all the best.